this is talking about your prospective financial information. So normally what is the responsibility of a CA कि जो अपना हिस्टोरिकल फिनेंशियल डेटा होता है उसके ऊपर वी आर गिविंग अ अश्योरेंस, वी आर चेकिंग द हिस्टोरिकल फिनेंशियल डेटा फॉर एनी मटेरियल मिसस्टेटमेंट फॉर एक्यूरेसी. वी चेक द इंटरनल कंट्रोल्स की जो फिनेंशियल डेटा है उसमें इंटरनल कंट्रोल्स की वजह से कुछ मिसस्टेटमेंट है या नहीं है. सो दैट इज़ basically our responsibility as a CA, where we are checking about historical financial information. But sometimes we are also called forward to forecast because we अपना expertise है in the matter, so we have to forecast. projections करने का होता है. जब भी valuation certificate देते तो what do? We make projections, correct? या अगर कभी बैंक्स को चाहिए कि तुम प्रोजेक्शंस करके दो हाउ द बिजनेस इज गोइंग टू डू इन द फ्यूचर, देन इन दैट केस यू आर सपोज टू डू prospective financial information, something which is not there currently, which will happen in the future. I am forecasting that information based on some logic that I am applying. ऐसा ज्योतिष नहीं अपन, तो अपन थोड़ा लॉजिक के बेसिस पे we will determine कि अच्छा this is what we are supposed to, if this is what we spend, this is what we will earn, this is how the growth has been for sales over the years, so this is what is expected to happen. But if I suddenly increase my HR cost or I suddenly increase my marketing expenditure, then this is how the impact will be on sales. So here I am making a forecast, and this forecast is based on certain assumptions that I am using, saying that this is how it will increase. अभी मैंने बोला कि HR का कॉस्ट है वो 50% से इंक्रीज होएगा, कल उठ के मेरे को एम्प्लॉयज़ नहीं मिला, और समटाइम्स देयर इज अ पॉसिबिलिटी लाइक आई टोल्ड यू इन द टेक सेक्टर, अचानक से इंजीनियर्स वर आस्किंग फॉर अ वेरी हाई सैलरी, सो द कॉस्ट इज इंक्रीजिंग 50%, बट दैट कॉस्ट इज गोइंग टू very few people instead of more number of employees hire, correct? So here what happens is that forecasts are based on assumptions, and these forecasts, there is a possibility that the forecast may go wrong in the future, correct? I expected sales to increase in a certain way, COVID happened and sales didn't increase in certain way, or I expected sales to increase in the certain way and the competitor business जो है वो shut down हो गया, तो my sales increase substantially. ऐसा भी हो सकता है, not as projected. So projections जो होता है, it is possible that what I am projecting today based on assumptions, facts or data which is available to me today, it may change in the future. I had projected basis that the investor will give me 100 crores and basis that this is how my financials will look for the next 5 years. But investor decided to give me only 50 crores. So again the projections will change. So this projections, as a CA in practice, we have studied in professional ethics that as a CA in practice I can have projections, I can give projections, projected financial statements for the future, forecasted financial statements, whatever is required I can do. But I cannot vouch on the accuracy of the data. If I am vouching on the accuracy of the data, then I am guilty of misconduct. Yes, आई कैन नॉट वाउच सेइंग कि हाँ ये 100% ऐसा ही होने वाला है, ज्योतिष नहीं है अपन, करेक्ट? सो वी आर गिविंग डेटा बेस्ड ऑन सर्टन फैक्ट्स, सर्टन अजम्पशंस एज ऑन डेट. आई कैन नॉट लाइक अ ज्योतिष से कि हाँ ये ऐसा ही होने ही वाला है, तुम्हारा शादी इसके साथ ही होएगा, ऐसा दैट 100% एक्यूरेसी के साथ आई कांट गिव. इफ आई डू दैट देन आई एम गिल्टी ऑफ प्रोफेशनल मिसकंडक्ट. सो योर नॉर्मली CA is giving on historical financial information. First chapter, last year inter, हर जगह हम जहाँ पे भी पढ़ते we say we give reasonable assurance on historical financial information for the intended users of financial statement. So that is what we always say. But sometimes we can also give forecast, sometimes we can also give projected financial statements, and that is also okay. But we will have to list down what are the assumptions that we are using, what is the rationale, what is the logic behind the forecast that we are giving, what is the data that we have used, and then basis that we can give the forecasted. This forecasted information के ऊपर can I give assurance कि जो दिया है वो 100% correct है? Not possible to give because it's a forecast. It is something that's going to happen in the future. So I will just give the forecast, but I cannot give it with 100% guarantee that this is going to happen in the way that is stated. Correct? So see what is it saying. So here we will study three this thing SAE. It is saying 3400 is saying examination of prospective financial information. 3402 किया है assurance report on controls at service organization, which we have already done. And 3420 says assurance engagement to report on compilation of pro forma financial information included in a prospectus. When you're giving a prospectus, what do? You give your projections only, no? कि अगर IPO किया, IPO में से अगर इतना पैसा आया, so this is what is my past and this is what is going to be my future based on the money that I receive from IPO. This is how I am going to spend it. People will see which industry you are spending, whether it is worth, not worth, all of that, and then they will decide whether to invest or not to invest. Correct? So IPO के लिए भी हम projected financial information use करते हैं, forecast use करते हैं. Traditionally, the attest functions performed by a CA in practice has been in relation to past events. Just one second. Traditionally, the attest functions performed by a CA in practice has been in relation to past events. However, growing and dynamic society has now started seeking professional association in its exercise relating to future. A manifestation of this is the requirement of banks, financial institutions, and prospective investors regarding the preparation of projected cash flow and profitability statement by intended borrowers or investees for the purpose of making an appropriate appraisal of their loan application and equity proposal. These institutions place a great reliance on such statements if they are prepared or reviewed by CA. Like I told you earlier also, that when I'm making forecast, when I'm making projected statements, I'm using certain assumptions. Data जो available है वो same है, but मेरे assumptions will change. So if I am preparing projections and some other CA is also preparing projections, there's a possibility that हमारा projections be different हो, valuation may be different. That is possible because assumptions can change, correct? These future oriented are known as prospective financial statements. Now, standards on assurance engagement, your SAE. An assurance engagement may relate to examination of subject matters other than examination of financial statements prepared on basis of historical financial information. So here I am giving you an assurance on financial statements. Assurance मतलब not confidence या जो अपना reasonable assurance जो audit के लिए, but I am saying that whatever I have prepared is true and best to my knowledge. So that I am saying कि I am giving you an assurance that I have taken these assumptions, these facts, like I told you, no, before I make my projected financial information, I will see what are the facts taken into consideration, what data I had available, what are the assumptions that I have used, why I have forecasted something in a particular way. So I will take into consideration all of this. But here in standards on assurance engagement, in your SAE, I will not give information about historical financial information. I will give about prospective financial information. In such type, examination may relate to prospective financial information or providing assurance regarding non-financial matters like design and operation of internal controls in a entity. कि कैसा controls है, अच्छा नहीं है, processes बराबर से adhere करते हैं कि नहीं करते हैं. That also is something that will fall under SAE जो अपन ने किया है service organization वाला. SAE deals with responsibility of professional accountants in assurance engagement. Level of assurance is provided by standard of assurance engagement is moderate. These are the three SAs. Now coming to the first SAE is examination of prospective financial information. What does this do? guidance on engagements to examine and report on prospective financial information, including examination procedures for best estimate and hypothetical assumptions. Examination of prospective need not necessarily be performed by a statutory auditor. So again, this is something not necessary that the statutory auditor has to do. Like in SRS, I told you, not necessary कि statutory auditor करेगा. This is again something which is not necessary that the statutory auditor will do. What is my financial information which I am seeing? So I will see assumptions about events and possible actions by entity. What action is the entity planning to do in the future? Are they going to raise funds? Are they going to raise money by way of deposits? Are they going to raise debentures? What are they planning to do in the future? Accordingly, the forecast will change. And also assumptions which I use. It is highly subjective in nature and requires exercise of considerable judgment because it is subjective. वो CA to CA भी बदलता है, इतना subjective है, correct? So my understanding and someone else's understanding may change. It can be in the form of forecast, projection, or a combination of both. Now they are saying it can be a forecast or a projection. Normally we use these words interchangeably, forecast and projections. So what is the difference between the two? They are saying is that forecast जब भी होता है, it is assumptions. दोनों में assumptions future events के ही होते हैं. Assumptions as to future events which management expects to take place. Action management expects to take as of the date of information is prepared. Best estimate assumptions. Assumptions that reflect anticipated experience with no provision for risk or adverse deviation. So based on my analysis or based on the data that is available to me today, without taking into consideration any risk factor, करेक्ट? कोविड आएगा तो कैसा होएगा, कोई एंटिटी नया आ गया, न्यू प्लेयर आ गया, रिलायंस आ गया मार्केट में, सबकी बैंड बजा देगा. सो ऐसा कोई प्लेयर आएगा. दैट ऑल थिंग्स आई एम नॉट टेकिंग इनटू कंसिडरेशन एंड बेस्ड ऑन टुडे द डेटा अवेलेबल आई एम डिसाइडिंग हाउ the projections will look in the future. That is forecast, she is saying. And here, what is a projection? Prospective information prepared on hypothetical assumptions about future events and management action. यहाँ पे assumptions are based on future events which management expects to take place. So here what management is planning to do in the future, raise debentures. Okay, so based on that, this is the assumption I am using कि तुम इतना डिबेंचर रेस करेगा, इतना अमाउंट विल बी पेबल टू यू एंड पेबल बाय यू टू द डिबेंचर होल्डर्स every year on year. This is what you will have to pay. So here what management is expecting to do, basis that I am giving my assumptions. Here I am giving my assumptions which are hypothetical assumptions which may not necessarily be based on management action, about future events and management actions which are not necessarily expected to take place, such as when some entities are in startup phase or are considering major change in the nature of operations, or a mixture of best estimate and hypothetical assumptions imagined and suggested. So यहाँ पे prospective में management क्या करने वाला है? Basis that I am not giving my assumptions. Basis that also I can give, but I will also have other assumptions कि अच्छा startup में है, there is no competitor in the market, they are doing this differently, so this is the differentiating factor. So basis that I assume that the sales will increase at this percentage, then that is a projection. But if I see management, I say okay, management is planning to raise 50 crores, investor is agreed to giving 50 crores for this much percent stake, then how the assumptions will change, that is my forecast. Are we understanding difference? It's normally used interchangeably, but there is a difference. In forecast, based on what management is planning to do, I will give my assumptions. In projection, hypothetical assumptions है, management करे नहीं करे, I will see other factors also, and basis that I will decide that how the projections will change. एग्जाम्पल्स है, देख लो एक बार. X Limited may project a course of action to take when one or more hypothetical situation arises, such as creating a new product to meet the demand of expected market growth As a result, assuming the possibility of different events occurring, financial projections typically serve as an outline for evaluating the desired outcome of X Limited is expected to see, including financial cash flow and operational outcomes. Company plans to raise funds from prospective equity investors, ask firm of chartered accountants to examine its profit forecast before placing it before the prospective equity investor. Company is in the process of setting up a new plant. If you ever get to attend a call for prospective equity investment, it is a wonderful thing to do. Like, you get to learn a lot of things. Like, we do it even without, even if I don't want to invest, I would want to attend the call, because when you attend these calls, you realize what happens is normally the company would have a very optimistic growth that they will show, saying that if I raise this funds, this is what I expect to achieve. And the way the investors talk, if you get to see like the bigger investors, because when we were pitching for the e-commerce company, we had calls with Sequoia and all of them. It is very, very nice to see that how the kind of questions they ask, like we were actually sweating when they were asking. It is so difficult to answer. So it's a beautiful thing to like practically attend these calls, because they are shameless and they are going to give the money. So of course, if you're giving like money to someone, you're going to ask questions, and they will ask you questions, and they will make you feel as if your company is nothing. They are going to invest, but that is a technique that they use, so that they have to give you lesser funds and for more equity stake. So that is how the investor Shark Tank and all is there, but that is also, it's a media, no, तो वो थोड़ा polished होता है. But when you actually see a call, investor call, then it is much more grueling as compared to what you see on Shark Tank. Company is in the process of setting up new plant. It needs financial assistance from bank in shape of term loan and working capital. The company has prepared projections for its profit cash flow for the next 7 years along with the underlying assumptions. So this is basically the difference between your forecast and your assumptions. What is the scope? Is to establish standard and provide guidance on engagement to examine, report prospective financial information, including the procedures, best estimate and hypothetical assumptions. Does not apply to examination of PFI expressed in general or narrative terms, such as found in management discussion and analysis in annual report. Though many of the procedures outlined may be suitable, I'll explain. Further, principle laid down in the other standards of auditing issued by ICAI should be used by the auditor to the extent applicable. The term auditor is used throughout this SAE when describing services involving prospective financial information. Such reference is not intended to imply a member performing such service need necessarily be a statutory auditor. So जो ये PFI देता है need not be a statutory auditor. And also it is saying that SAE जो ये है is applicable when you're giving this information to third parties. Now, apart from third parties, also sometimes management, for their own internal understanding with the data that they have available with them, they prepare projections to see that okay, ऐसा ऐसा होने वाला है. यहाँ पे कोई investor कुछ नहीं है. It is only for internal understanding कि how we are expecting to grow, and then they compare कि actual growth कितना हुआ है, to understand that why we have achieved why we have not achieved what we were planning to achieve, or why we have achieved more. So that they use for their internal understanding. तो जो internal understanding के लिए when they are making this data, at that point of time this SAE का application नहीं होता है. This is when you're giving like a proper projection to third parties, investors, banks, financial institutions. इनको when we are giving, at that point of time this SAE will apply. Internally करते हैं day to day के लिए, उसमें this SAE will not apply. Nature क्या है? Prospective financial information relates to events and actions that have not yet occurred and might not occur. While evidence may be available to support the assumptions on which PFI is based, such evidence is generally future-oriented and speculative in nature, as distinct from the evidence originally available in HFI. Therefore, an opinion as to whether the results shown in PFI will be achieved कैन नॉट बी एक्सप्रेस्ड. एक पक्का ओपिनियन नहीं दे सकते कि ऐसा होने ही वाला है. रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी क्या है? मैनेजमेंट इज रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर द preparation and presentation of PFI, including identification and disclosure, examining the basis of forecast and the underlying assumptions. Why management is responsible? Because end of the day CA अपन कितने भी शाणे रहेंगे, we will not know the business like the management does. So the person to whom the business belongs, it is always that person who will know the business very well. So while we will forecast, while we will give assumptions, and while we will see the data and all of that, end of the day the management has to approve कि ऐसा सच्ची में होने वाला है कि नहीं. इसके लिए वो responsibility is with the management. Can professional accountants be associated with PFI? This we have also done in your professional ethics, saying that we can give prospective financial information. We can have forecast, we can projections, assumptions लेके जो भी करना है कर सकते हैं, लेकिन we cannot vouch for the accuracy of the data that we are giving. अगर vouch किया तो misconduct, vouch नहीं किया खाली projections किया, then why not we can also do what we are supposed to do. That is why this SAE has come into force, correct? So traditionally attest functions performed by CA is for HFI, recognizing professional skill for by the banks and financial institutions and prospective investors intended, place great reliance on the report of projected cash flow signed by CA. And second schedule of clause 3 of second schedule states that CA in practice shall be deemed guilty if he permits his name or name of firm to be used in connection with an estimate of earnings contingent upon future transaction in any manner which may lead to the belief that he vouches for the accuracy of the fact. अगर तूने vouch किया तो misconduct, otherwise you can make. Does not preclude a CA from associating his name with prospective financial information. CA can participate in preparation of forecast and can review them, provided he indicates clearly in his report the source of information, the basis of forecast and the major assumptions arrived, and so long as he does not vouch for the accuracy of the forecast. तो कहाँ से आया, क्या forecast का basis है, क्या assumptions use किए, वो देके I can make, but I cannot vouch on the accuracy of the information that I am providing. Duties of members who is examining the PFI. In an engagement to examine PFI, the auditor should obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence as to whether the management's best estimate assumptions on which the prospective financial information is based are not unreasonable, and in case of hypothetical assumptions, such assumptions are consistent with the purpose of the information. Prospective financial information is properly prepared on the basis of the assumptions. It is properly presented and all material assumptions are adequately disclosed, indicating a clear indication as to whether they are best estimate and hypothetical assumptions. And it is prepared on a consistent basis with HFI using appropriate accounting policies. So here, like we discussed, responsibility किसका है? Management का है. तो management जो है knows his business well, and they will say that okay, this is what is the assumptions we can use, this is what the forecast. Now this forecast which you make is most of the times, okay, not always, startup में नहीं होता है, startup में क्योंकि उतना historical अगर नहीं है तो, but most of the times it is based on your historical financial statement कि last 5 साल में every year I am seeing 20% year on year growth. So in the future, if no one is questioning, then 20% year on year growth हो सकता है, unless I do something different, I get a new product, I get money, I do something different, then that 20% will change. But otherwise 20% historical में है तो again it will go historical में, 20% है तो future में भी it will be 20%. So this is based on consistent basis of my HFI. इसके अलावा whatever assumptions I am making, as auditor, my responsibility is to check that these are not unreasonable. Like I told you that when investor gets on call, management जो बनाएगा is optimistic, rosy picture, no, because I want पैसा. So these assumptions should not be unrealistic. Who will check these assumptions are not unrealistic? I will check, because I am signing it. So I will question like an investor, saying that this is something doesn't make sense. अगर every year तूने 20% दिया है without any new thing coming into place, then how that 20 can become 30, 40, 50? ऐसा बढ़ेगा कैसा? Because last इतना साल तो it has not increased. Now अचानक से कैसा बढ़ेगा? So you have to question the management like an investor, and you have to see that assumptions that he is using is not unreasonable. This, based on the assumptions, he has properly prepared the statement, and all material assumptions are properly disclosed. So my responsibility is to ensure कि ज़्यादा रोजी पिक्चर नहीं दिखाना है, क्योंकि जो है वैसा होना चाहिए. And जो assumptions लिए हैं, assumptions are proper, assumptions are disclosed, and where historical financial information के basis पे you are giving your projections, then you have to maintain that consistency unless you are showing some change in your business. Correct? Now, nature of assurance, it can never be 100% assurance, because future forecast है, subjective है. So future oriented है, speculative है, and that is why it is not possible to show that it is opinion is 100% SI होने वाला है, because that is not possible. So that is the nature that we have already read आगे also. Now acceptance of engagement. Next part है acceptance of engagement. Now acceptance में what are the precautions that I need to take before I am accepting engagement? Again, similar to what we studied in SRS. Intended use, कहाँ पे use करने वाला है? General और limited distribution. General मतलब कि जो management के internal use के लिए, limited मतलब for investors, for banks, जो limited लोगों के लिए ये PFI है. Nature of assumptions used, and elements to be included in the information. So you have your intended use, information कहाँ पे, assumptions, elements, and the period covered. कौन से period के लिए ये financial statements हैं, next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Should not accept or withdraw from engagement when the assumptions are unrealistic or auditor believes that PFI will be inappropriate for its intended use. The auditor should consider the extent to which reliance on historical financial statement is justified, and the terms of engagement should be agreed with the client by sending an engagement letter. So whatever you decide, you have to send an engagement letter before you actually go ahead and start your procedures. So क्या क्या देखना है? Intended use क्या है? For what purpose I am going to use that data? For who is the target audience? Intended use, what is the targeted audience? What are my assumptions? What period I am covering? Any other elements or information which I need to include? And then if any of these assumptions are unrealistic or projections are not proper, then I can withdraw from the engagement. What are the procedures that I will have to perform? So when I am giving my projected financial information, I will use knowledge obtained during any previous engagement. So people who are specialized in giving these valuation reports, so वो लोग valuation report देते हैं for investors saying that this is the valuation of the company. अपन वहाँ पे पढ़े थे, पता है कि third party will come and give valuation DCF. So यहाँ पे if you are giving a valuation, then my knowledge of how I have projected for other companies is relevant. So accordingly my procedures will change. Management's competence in the preparation of information, extent to which it is affected by the management judgment, likelihood of material misstatement, sources of information which I have used for preparing the financial information, stability of the business, and the engagement team's experience. So my knowledge, my experience is important when I am preparing. My team's efficiency also important when we are preparing as a team. But मैनेजमेंट जो इन्फॉर्मेशन दे रहा है उसका क्या रिलायबिलिटी है, assumptions जो बना रहा है, जो जजमेंट्स बना रहा है, what is the reliability, what is the how much like are the assumptions true based on my understanding of historical data of this company? Are the assumptions which the management is making, are they correct, or are they very rosy, or are they very stringent, is what I will try and understand. Along with that, because I am using historical financial information to project future, then what is the data that is available to me? What is the purpose? Say for example कि investor आने वाला है, how much are the investors planning to invest? Basis that, how much can we spend? What is the industry dynamics of that particular industry that will change my spend and the revenue? So if there are too many players in the market, if I am spending on marketing, my increase in revenue will be less. But if there are only two players in the market and now I am spending 100 crores, then my revenue increase will be higher because there are lesser number of players. If I am the only player in the market currently, then if I am getting 100 crores and I spend on marketing, then my increase will be substantial year on year. So based on those things, how I am making the assumption. So I also have to take into account the industry dynamics before I come to the conclusion as to how it will change. So all of these things I will take into consideration before I am giving. So यहाँ पे process में ऐसा नहीं है कि ये check करना है या ये देखना है, because everything I can't check. It is all future. So I will check my assumptions, industry knowledge, मेरा expertise, मेरा experience, my judgments, management का judgments, how management expects to achieve that particular thing. So all of those things will come as examination procedures. यहाँ पे we will not check data which is already there, because this is not historical financial. So here your information or your answer will be based on how the assumptions are changing, उसका underlying data क्या है, how judgments are being made, and how you are forecasting the data based on your experience, your skill and your team skill. Correct? Significant implications of assumption should be taken into consideration. Now, once I have done my procedure, presentation and disclosure करेंगे. So, when I am giving my presentation of financial statement, तो मेरा presentation ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि सामने वाले को लगे कि ये year on year 50% से increase होने वाला है. It has to be something which is close to being a realistic based on the information that is available. It should not be something misleading जहाँ पे किसी को ऐसे लगे कि अच्छा this is what is going to happen, when in fact it is not going to happen. Even though it's a forecast, I can say okay, this is not how it will increase. Correct? So like I told you, अगर every year 20% increase है, if I don't know anything new, then it should remain at 20%. Correct? But if it is going 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, then it is misleading. Because on what basis are you increasing it by 10% without any other factors changing? So it shouldn't be misleading. What are the assumptions that I've used and what are the judgments that I've made? That is something that I will disclose. So it is ensure it is informative, not misleading. Accounting policies are clearly disclosed. Assumptions are adequately disclosed. It needs to be clear whether the assumptions represent management's best estimate or hypothetical. And when assumptions are made in areas that are material and are subject to a high degree of uncertainty, the uncertainty and the resulting sensitivity needs to be adequately disclosed. The date on which the prospective financial statements are prepared is important, because the period and the date which we are covering is very very important ना. आज बना रहे तो अलग हो सकता है. After 6 months, if situation has changed, when there are many people in the market who has come doing similar business, then as on that date if I make, then my forecast and projections will be completely different. Basis for establishing points in a range is clearly indicated, and the range is not selected in a biased and misleading manner. So for what range I am considering my financial statements is again important. The data for that range, change in accounting policies from that disclosed in most recent historical financial statement, and reasons for change is something that I will include. Here also report, when I am making my final report, title, addressee, date, place, signature, ये तो मैंने डाला. So these are my disclosures regarding my assumptions that I am going to make and the basis on which आई एम गोइंग टू प्रिपेयर माई रिपोर्ट. दिस इज माई रिपोर्ट कि मेरा जो फाइनल रिपोर्ट बनेगा उसमें क्या क्या आ रहा है. सो इन दिस फाइनल रिपोर्ट व्हाट एम आई स्टेटिंग, वट एवर द स्टैंडर्ड पॉइंट्स ऐसे 700 का है वो. Identification of prospective financial information, reference to standards of auditing, management responsible for prospective financial information including underlying assumptions. Then किसको देना है, distribution किसके पास जाएगा. Then examination procedures are done on test basis. Negative assumptions as to whether assumptions provide a negative assurance as to whether assumptions provide a reasonable basis. Opinion that they are prepared on assumptions and is presented in accordance with relative framework. Appropriate caveats for achieving results indicated by prospective financial information. So if you see your report again, it comes from your objective, whatever we have studied for this particular कि मैं क्या क्या देखेगी. तो I will see identification पहले करेगी, financial information का standard जो है वो apply हो रहा है कि नहीं. रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी मेरा नहीं है. रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी वी नो हियर वी हैव स्टडीड इज द मैनेजमेंट्स रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी. सो मैनेजमेंट का रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है टू गिव दिस पर्टिकुलर फोरकास्ट. देन व्हाट आर द assumptions that I have used, and that whatever check I have done for the assumptions it is based on test basis. मैंने सब information ऐसा का ऐसा full check नहीं किया 100% accuracy के साथ. टेस्ट बेसिस पे मैंने मेरे प्रोसीजर्स कंडक्ट किए हैं एंड बेसिस दैट आई एम गिविंग द इंफॉर्मेशन दैट इज रिक्वायर्ड. एंड इफ एनी अजम्पशन इज नॉट मेकिंग सेंस, अनरीजनेबल और इज टू ऑप्टिमिस्टिक, then in that case I will give a negative assurance कि this is something which is in our view is not correct. तो वैसा opinion में I will mention that it seems to be very optimistic and hence the the assurance level is not as it should be. Correct. So if the assumption had been something else, the assurance would have been higher. So if it had been assumption is a lesser what do you call less riskier or less optimistic assumption that you are making, then in that case the assurance level will be higher and you have to ensure that it is properly prepared as per applicable reporting framework. Date, place, signature जो है वो रहेगा. Such report would state whether based on examination of evidence supporting the assumptions anything has come to the attention that does not provide reasonable basis for PFI. So anything which has come to my knowledge which I feel that is important should have been highlighted. Expresses an opinion that it is in accordance with the relevant financial reporting framework. ये same point इधर आ रहा है. Actual results are likely to be different because guilty of misconduct हो जाएगा अगर बोलेगा कि ऐसा ही होने वाला है. करेक्ट. So here I have to say that what I have projected and what is happening, there is going to be a difference. It is based on anticipated events and variation could be there. What set of assumptions, hypothetical assumptions, management actions are used is something that I will highlight. Where presentation is not adequate, you can give a qualified or adverse opinion if required. Where significant assumptions do not provide a reasonable basis or best estimate assumptions, or that significant assumptions do not provide a reasonable basis for PFI given the hypothetical assumptions, adverse opinion can be stated, or you can also withdraw if need be. You can say that I would not want to give this particular what do you call assurance on the projected financial information. Examination is affected by conditions that preclude application of one or more procedures considered necessary, either withdrawal or describing the scope for limitation. Then coming to matters which are important in providing evidence to support examination, and such examination was carried out in accordance with SAE. These are the two things that you will have to document. So what are we understanding here? Well, it is a generic standard and it talks about the same thing again and again. What is the important thing that we are learning here? One is that as a CA, normally I give historical financial information के ऊपर I give my what do you call assurance. But sometimes when it is required by banks, financial institutions, investors, I can give information on projected financial statement. Now these projected financial statements are based on future forecast on projections. Forecast मतलब जो future events होगा which management is expecting to take place, and projections is where hypothetical assumptions I do where management may or may not expect it to take place. So based on the future forecast projections, I will prepare my projected financial information and I will give my opinion. CA Act does not prohibit a CA from giving assurance on projected financial statements. Clause 3 of second schedule states that you can give an opinion, but if your opinion is such that it vouches for the accuracy कि ये ऐसा ही होने वाला है, then in that case what will happen is that I am guilty of misconduct. So I cannot vouch for the accuracy, but I can give projected financial statements, and while giving the projected financial statements, I will mention that what is the source of information, what are the assumptions that I have taken into place, and how I have come to the conclusions which are there, and then accordingly I will give my assumptions. Now, here so this is my scope that I will give information about prospective financial information. Nature is that it is future oriented, it is speculative in nature, and hence it is possible that whatever information I am giving, that will change in the future, and there is a high chance that it will not be the same that I have forecasted. This information which I am giving, the responsibility of the information, of the forecast, of the assumptions, of the data that is given is on the management. So it is not my responsibility as an auditor to check these data, because the person who's running the business will have a better idea of the assumptions and the forecast as compared to me. But now when I'm accepting the engagement, I will see why I am supposed to prepare financial statements, what is the data that is available, what is the accuracy of the data that is provided, historical financial, because it will based on that, what is the management actions, what are the management, is management ready to take responsibility for the things which are judgments and assumptions and all of that. Then I basis that I will see that okay, I have to prepare this projected financial statements, and I will sign an engagement letter. Once I have signed the engagement letter, then I will perform my procedures. Here I will perform procedures on historical financial statements to see that how they have changed year on year and make my projections for the future. At the same time, I will see assumptions which are taken, management judgments which are taken into consideration, wherever there is a forecast, how it has changed, what is the industry dynamics which will affect my forecast, and basis all of this, I will give my final report. This final report which I am giving, I have to ensure that it is properly presented, assumptions are properly disclosed. If there is something which is assumption is there which I don't agree with, which the management has given, then I will highlight that particular assumption saying that this is something which is different. So I will disclose all of this. I will see that everything that is being prepared for the future is based on the applicable financial reporting framework or not. And then basis that I will make my report. When I am making my report, title, address, date, place, signature, वो सब डालेंगे. उसके अलावा क्या डालेंगे कि this is projected, it is a forecast, likely possible to change, it is prepared as per SAE, it is not something which is general, it is specific for certain intended users and it is for them only. These are the assumptions that we have used, these are the judgments that have been used. Final responsibility of assumptions judgment rests with the management. So I will mention all these things in my report, and then that report, applicable financial reporting framework, all of that I will include in my report, and then I will submit the report. What I will document is that my to support my projected financial statements, whatever documents, facts, everything that I've collected, that is something I will document, and I will document that everything is prepared as per this SAE. Correct? So This is all about your SAE 3402. 3400. Yes, so coming to the last part of this particular chapter, which is pertaining to your SAE 3420. What does it say? It is saying assurance engagement to report on compilation of pro forma financial information included in a prospectus. So what does this exactly mean? So say for example, just a second. Yes. So say for example, you have prepared your balance sheet as on 31st March 2025. Okay, and now you are issuing a prospectus on say 30th of June 2025. Okay, now between the date of your balance sheet and the prospectus date, there is a significant event that has occurred. Say for example on 15th of May 2025. Okay, so what happens is that your financial statements are prepared as on this date, but when you are issuing the prospectus, you are saying that your financials are prepared on this date, on 31st of March 2025. You're giving information as per that, but there is a significant event that has come into place, that has occurred between the date of the balance sheet and between the date of the prospectus. So what happens is that this event has to be reflected, or it has to be shown in the financial statements that you are submitting, to show that if this event had occurred before 31st March 2025, how would have my financials changed, is what I will have to tell my investors. So in the prospectus that I'm issuing, I need to show this significant event, and then basis that I will prepare my financial statements, which is an adjusted financial statement, and this is something which I will give to the investors. So what is it saying? See, deals with assurance and engagement undertaken by practitioner to report on responsible parties compliance of pro forma financial information included in prospectus. So your responsible party is nothing but your client. Okay, so it's your client. So when you're compiling data for your client, it applies where reporting is required by SEBI, in which prospectus is to be issued. Okay. Now, what is pro forma financial information? Refers to financial information shown together with adjustments to illustrate the impact of an event or transaction or unadjusted financial information as if the event had occurred or transaction had been undertaken at an earlier date selected for the purpose of illustration. So I will show my financial statements on this date as if this event had occurred before my illustrated financial statements are made. It is normally used in offer documents to demonstrate the effect of a transaction on FS if transaction had occurred on an earlier date. The pro forma financial statement may take the form of statement of profit and loss account, balance sheet, to illustrate how the transactions might have affected the assets and liabilities and earnings of the issuer. They also include notes relevant to the significant aspects. The purpose is included in a prospectus is solely to illustrate the impact of significant event or transaction on unadjusted financial information as if it had occurred on an earlier date. This is achieved by applying pro forma adjustments to the unadjusted financial statement and does not represent the actual financial position or cash flow. So this is my unadjusted financial statements, and this adjustment for significant event that I make. So it is saying to make a pro forma adjustment. So this adjustment that I make for significant event is called as my pro forma adjustment. Does it show the true picture as on 31st March 2025? No, because this event has occurred after 31st March 2025. But for the users to understand that, okay, you are investing in this company, this event has already occurred. Had it occurred on earlier date, then how my financial statements would look is something that I will want to show. Are we understanding? So this is the entire logic. So this is your pro forma adjustment that you're making. This is your unadjusted financial statements that you have, and this unadjusted financial statement is of a client which is known as your responsible party. Who am I? I am a practitioner. What will I give? I will give reasonable assurance. Reasonable assurance on what? That had this event been reflected, how the financial statements would look. I will not give a reasonable assurance on the unadjusted financial statement. That I don't have to do. That is auditor जो है वो करेगा. That not necessarily be me. Correct? So here unadjusted financial statements पे assurance I don't have to give. I have to give my opinion on this financial statements, which is my pro forma financial information PFFI, which is based on the entire the SAE is based on the entire concept of PFFI. So my logic, or my not logic, my responsibility or my assurance will be based on PFFI. So I will say that this event has occurred from your balance sheet date to date of prospectus, and this is what has changed. Now, had this changed before 31st March 2025, this is how your financials would look. I am just giving them a understanding by preparing that PFFI कि अगर ये बाद में होता पहले होता तो how would my FS would look. So here I am just showing that, and I am giving reasonable assurance saying that this significant event has occurred. This is how it will show. Historically, this is how effect is given. This is the accounting policy you have applied, and this is how my PFFI will look. Are we understanding? So reasonable assurance is on PFFI and not on this. Okay, it is on this. Are we understanding? Now if you read, you will be able to understand. So the question is assurance engagement to report on compilation of PFFI included in the prospectus. So I am giving an assurance or a report on the PFFI which I am including in the prospectus. And here the objectives will say reasonable assurance about PFFI compiled in all material aspects by responsible party on the basis of applicable criteria, and report such in the practitioner's finding. So what will happen here is that PFFI which I am making, the significant event, I will not actually make it. Who will make it? Management. Management banata hai. Who will make financial statements? Management. So PFFI who will make management. But my responsibility as auditor is what? To give a assurance on your FS. Your responsibility is to give a report on the PFFI. Okay, and it is saying that it is made on the basis of applicable criteria. So how every time when we study, like when we were doing essays also, we saw that it has to be in accordance with the applicable financial reporting framework. Correct? So here there are certain criteria laid down saying that when you are making your PFFI, it has to be as per this particular criteria. Criteria we don't have to study. So my responsibility as an auditor is to check what? As a practitioner, it is to check whether the applicable criteria has been applied, PFFI made properly by the management, and then given assurance report. Compilation of PFFI. What has to be done? Responsible party gather, classify, summarize and present financial information that illustrates the impact of significant event or transaction. Steps involved: identifying the source of unadjusted financial information to be used in compiling the data, making pro forma adjustments, and presenting it in the manner along with the disclosures. So this is my unadjusted financial statement. So here in this unadjusted financial statement, I will have to figure out the source. What is the data that I have to use? Plus I have to make these adjustments that are there here, and then consolidate and make this and make relevant disclosures. So these 1, 2, 3 is the steps which are involved. If you remember this particular arrangement, then you will be able to answer most of the questions here. What is my responsibility as a practitioner? No responsibility to compile. That is the responsibility of the responsible party. Sole responsibility is to report whether PFI is compiled in all material aspects by the responsible party basis the applicable criteria. If it is a reasonable assurance engagement, to report on compilation involving performing procedures to assess whether applicable criteria used in compilation of PFFI provides a reasonable basis for presenting the significant effects directly attributable to the event or transaction. So here what you're doing is that normal which we have done for SRS, SRE, यही करते हैं. What do? First we accept, we plan and perform the engagement. Any written representations if has to be taken, we take it. Because we are giving assurance, we have to form opinion, and end of it we give the report. So first is engagement acceptance. Now when you are accepting the engagement, what are the things that you will look into and what are the things you will check before you are taking the engagement? So before agreeing to accept whether pro forma financial information included in prospectus has been compiled, whether responsible party has compiled it or not compiled it, in all material respects as per the applicable criteria. Applicable criteria used by responsible party while compiling the pro forma financial information. This criteria may be established by an authorized or recognized standard setting organization or by law or regulation. So this will be set up by someone. Where it does not exist, then responsible party will themselves make the applicable criteria. Now then see whether practitioner has the capability and competence, whether I can perform it or not. So first I will see responsible party, whether they have compiled the data, this compilation whether they have done as per applicable criteria. Applicable criteria, has the law suggested such applicable criteria? If not suggested, they have made it as per the applicable criteria which they deem fit or not. Then I will check my thing, whether I am capable and competent enough to do this. On the basis of preliminary knowledge of engagement circumstances and discussion, determine the applicable criteria that are suitable, that is unlikely that the pro forma financial will be misleading. So I have to check whether the applicable criteria is properly selected or not, otherwise my PFFI will become misleading. So that is something we should not allow. Evaluate the wording of opinion prescribed by relevant law or regulation to determine practitioner will be able to express the opinion by performing the procedures. So see that law or regulation, if they are giving you applicable criteria, have they also suggested that your report has to be worded accordingly, and whether I as a practitioner can I give such a report, am I comfortable giving such a report or not based on my audit evidence that I am going to obtain. Source from where? So here, okay, so how you will see applicable criteria, you can write it down if you want. Okay, here you are checking the applicable criteria, competence, then PFFI not misleading, wordings of opinion, okay, then source of data, source from which unadjusted financial information and any acquiry or divesty financial information have been extracted, have been audited or reviewed, and a modified audit opinion or review conclusion has been expressed, or the report contains emphasis of matter paragraph, consider whether or not relevant law or regulation permits the use in or reference in practitioner's report to the modified audit opinion. So your source of data, sorry, one second. Plus modified opinion on unadjusted FS. So what is it saying? That say for example, my financial statements which are prepared as on 31st March 2025, ये वाला financial statement unadjusted. Okay, so my unadjusted FS is audited, and this audited has a modified opinion. Now if it has a modified opinion, then I have to check whether my law and regulation allows PFFI. Can I still issue PFFI because this is already modified opinion? So there's some problem with the source only, the basic FS on which I am going to make adjustment, correct? So I have FS. In this FS I will make adjustment and I will get what? PFFI. If this is only problematic, then on that I make adjustment, then this PFFI will also become a problem. Yes. So he's saying that if it is audited, if this is audited and if there is a modified opinion, then see if I can make the adjustment to give PFFI, and this PFFI should not be misleading. Are we understanding? Then if the entities, then I will go ahead take the engagement. Otherwise doesn't make sense. No, misleading PFFI deke matlab kya hai? Doesn't make sense. If entity's historical financial statement has never been audited or reviewed, consider whether practitioner can obtain sufficient understanding of entity and its accounting reporting practices to perform the engagement. If event or transaction includes an acquisition and the acquiree's historical financial statements have never been audited, consider whether practitioner can obtain sufficient understanding to perform the engagement. So here he is saying audited hai, so you check modified opinion hai ki nahi, then can I issue PFFI. If this is unaudited, I have to check if I can get SAE and then issue PFFI. Is this possible or not? Now he's saying if this company जिसका unadjusted FS है, if this company is acquiring another company, so this is say XYZ and this is acquiring PQR. One is I will check इसका audit हुआ है कि नहीं हुआ है, and then audit नहीं हुआ है तो SAE करेंगे, audit हुआ है तो I will check if there is a modified opinion, which we just studied here, this, correct? Now here it is saying for PQR I will check if this is audited or not, because adjustment तो ये acquiring का ही मैं कर रही हूँ ना. So I will adjust this acquire, whatever acquisition is there, this I am going to adjust. So to adjust this I have to see इसका audit हुआ है कि नहीं. If this is not audited, then I will see if I can do SAE here to get information for my adjustment and then issue my PFFI. Are we understanding? Obtain the agreement. So data not audited, acquiring not audited. We will draw this chart there while writing so that you remember what we have discussed. Now, obtain agreement of responsible party that it acknowledges and understands its responsibility for adequately disclosing and describing the applicable criteria, compiling the PFFI, provide practitioner with access to all information such as records, documents, other material information, whether pro forma has been compiled in all material aspects or not. So for me to check, I need to have all the information, additional information that I may request, and access to those within the entity and entity's advisor from whom the practitioner determines to obtain evidence. So you give me access to people who will give me the necessary data, and when needed, appropriate individuals within the acquiry in a business combination. So here, if business combination is happening, then people access to people in PQR, correct? Access to people in XYZ plus info in XYZ plus additional info requested. Are we understanding? And after taking all of this into consideration, I will prepare my PFFI. So I I will accept my engagement for giving reasonable assurance on PFFI. Are we understanding what it means? Once I have accepted the engagement, so I will check all of this, whether compilation done, applicable criteria hai ki nahi hai, management is giving me acknowledgement that all the information will be given or not, and whether accounts are audited, not audited, all of that I will check. Basis that I will decide whether I want to accept the engagement or don't want to accept. Then once I have accepted the engagement, how I will perform the engagement? Then first I will have to check whether the applicable criteria are suitable as required by the framework. Whether planning on performing, practitioner shall consider materiality with respect to evaluating whether PFFI has been compiled in all material aspects or not. So in checking, this particular line which is there will come everywhere. Every SA, SAE, SRS, everything has one single line which comes from your objective. तो वो सब जगह लिखना ही है. So here you have to check whether PFFI compiled in all material respects as per applicable criteria. How the responsible party has compiled. Obtain audit evidence for the appropriateness of the source from which unadjusted financial information has been extracted. If there is no audit or review report, practitioner shall perform procedures to be satisfied. Practitioner shall determine whether responsible party has appropriately extracted the unadjusted financial information. Obtain evidence about the appropriateness of the adjustments. So the adjustments that I am making here, this, whether it is appropriate or not, correct? This adjustment, whether it's appropriate or not. Now, what will we check there? Adjustments to unadjusted financial information illustrate the impact of significant event or transaction if the event has occurred or transaction undertaken, and adjustments to unadjusted financial information that are necessary for pro forma financial information to be compiled on consistent basis with applicable financial reporting framework. The practitioner shall evaluate the presentation of pro forma financial information and shall read the other information included in prospectus to identify material inconsistencies, if any, with the pro forma financial information. So what I have to do as a practitioner is basically check that what management has prepared, whether it is prepared properly, not properly, any material events, whether it has been reflected, not reflected, applicable criteria, applied, not applied, and whatever pro forma adjustments are required. First, checking source of the unadjusted financial information, from where they have got the unadjusted FS, whether that is correct or not. Then pro forma adjustments that you make, whether these adjustments are made properly not properly, and whether your whatever accounting policies that you have applied on an unadjusted FS, that same has been applied on the pro forma adjustment or not, and then finally you will report on that particular matter. And if there are inconsistencies with the prospectus and unadjusted FS, then that is something you will check and highlight. Okay. Now, written representations from responsible party. How we take written representations from management TCWG? Same way here you will take from responsible party, which is management TCWG. So here identified all appropriate pro forma adjustments, whether they have identified it or not, and they have been compiled in all material aspects as per the applicable criteria. So they will have to give a written representation, so that if something has been missed out, then the practitioner is not responsible, because the SAE says that my responsibility is not to compile. Compile is responsible party's responsibility. So while compiling significant events taken or not, again it is their responsibility. My responsibility is only to check whether PFFI is prepared properly or not. Are we understanding? Now, practitioner opinion. Unmodified, modified, and apna emphasis. Practitioner shall express unmodified where practitioner concludes that PFFI has been compiled in all material respects by the responsible party. Everything is okay, I will give a unmodified opinion. Modified. Now, where relevant law or regulation precludes publication of a prospectus that contains a modified opinion with regards to whether PFFI has been compiled in all material aspects on the basis of applicable criteria, practitioner concludes that a modified opinion is nevertheless appropriate. I feel that okay, law and regulation is saying you can't issue modified opinion, but I am sure that the way it is being prepared, it is not something which is correct. So I have to issue a modified opinion. Then in that case, what I will do, first we always discuss the matter with management TCWG. Here we will discuss the matter with responsible party. If responsible party does not agree to make changes, withdraw from engagement. Withdraw not possible, consider seeking legal advice. Same what we have done there, correct, for modified opinion in 700. Then where law or regulation may not preclude. Now it is saying that law and regulation, one option is it is saying that you can not have modified opinion, other is saying you can have modified opinion. Then in that case, practitioner determines that modified opinion is appropriate. In accordance with, practitioner shall apply the requirements in framework for assurance regarding modified opinion. So if the law is saying that you can issue modified opinion, I feel modified opinion is required, then I will issue modified opinion. Emphasis of matter. Emphasis of matter para, again we have studied in 700 series, that anything which is relevant, then I will show it. I am not, by putting it in emphasis, I cannot say that I will not issue modified opinion. So both are mutually exclusive. So here I am saying that I want to highlight something that has happened, but I am not issuing modified. It doesn't require issuing a modified opinion, which is why I have put it in the emphasis of matter para. So this would be the case when in the practitioner's opinion, the matter is of such importance that it is fundamental to the user's understanding of whether PFFI has been compiled with in all material aspects. In such circumstances, practitioner shall issue EOM para in the report, provided practitioners obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence that the matter does not affect whether PFFI has been compiled with in all material aspects. Such a para refer only to information presented or disclosed in PFFI or accompanying explanatory notes. So I will just mention that this is how there is a some matter which needs to be highlighted, and this matter I will be highlighting. So I will not do anything else, I will just highlight it for the user's understanding. Preparing the report, we will see what the report entails and the documentation. It's a small part, so we'll finish that and then write. It is saying report. Report we know, title, addressee and your date, place, signature. correct? Previous SRS also we have done same, SRE, SAE. Everywhere we know that report will have these 5 things in common. Now, what is new for this particular SAE? Introductory para. In this, I will give introduction about my PFFI, source, period covered, and applicable criteria. So I will talk about the information. This is the applicable criteria. PFFI has been prepared. This is the source, and this is the period for which it is prepared. Statement that responsible party is responsible for compiling. Description of practitioner's responsibility to express an opinion. Not responsible for updating or reissuing any reports on any historical financial information. So he's saying that this financial information which we are making as on 31st March 2025, I don't have to issue any report, or I don't have to make changes, or don't have to suggest changes to balance sheet as on 31st March. That is not my lookout. My lookout is only this, correct? So I don't have to update or reissue any reports on historical financial information, and my responsibility is to illustrate the impact of significant event or transaction on unadjusted financial information had that transaction taken place before the unadjusted financial information was made. Are we understanding? Now, uske alawa, what is my responsibility? Statement that engagement was performed in accordance with SAE 3420. Again, every report, whichever SRS, SAE, SA, whatever you are making, like whatever the question is, according to that you have to say it is made as per that particular SAE, correct? Practitioner complies with ethical requirements, plan and perform procedures to obtain reasonable assurance. Statement that reasonable assurance engagement to report on whether pro forma has been complied in all material aspects according to applicable criteria. Related pro forma adjustments have been given appropriate effect and reflect the proper application of those adjustments. Procedures selected depend on the practitioner's judgment. How to give effect, what to do, that is based on my judgment. Evaluating overall presentation. Unless required by law, the practitioner's opinion using one of the following phrases which are regarded as being equivalent. Pro forma financial has been compiled in all material aspects on the basis of applicable criteria and has been properly complied on the basis stated. So that one line, in all material aspects as per applicable criteria, is something that you should mention. That is your objective. So objective is what I have fulfilled basically as per this SAE is what you have to report. So again, like I've told you, that if report has been asked, you just have to understand what is the SAE about. You know, SAE is about unadjusted info plus making adjustments, giving PFFI. So this much if you know, you will be able to write the report. How will you write the report? Title, addressee, that date, place, signature, common things. Then I will write source kahan se aaya hai, whether adjustments has been made or not, and whether PFFI made in all material aspects as per applicable criteria. Checking whether who is responsible for this, management. So responsible party has compiled it properly. They have taken into account all the adjustments, source data correctly taken into account. My responsibility as per this SAE, I have to ensure that everything that's required to be done as per this SAE, I have done that. I am going to give only reasonable assurance. I have to give reasonable assurance only on PFFI. So historical, if there is any changes, I will not look into that. And I will check if it is objective. All material aspects as per applicable criteria has been applied, not applied. So you have to understand the SAE. Once you know the SAE report, you will be able to write it in your own words. Last part is documentation. Ensured as in case of all assurance engagement to be made in accordance with SAE 3420. That is the only part. We'll quickly go through the questions. A company has approached CA Hemant for an assurance report in respect of prospective financial information of a project. Ongoing through the project details, it is noticed that the depreciation reflected on the proposed fixed assets to be acquired in the prospective financial information has been calculated in accordance with the provisions of the Income Tax Act. No disclosure has been made. How should you proceed with the matter? So here, if you're making prospective financial information, it has to be in accordance with your HFI, the accounting policies and all of that. That will not change. So if it is not happening that way, you have to show it. Duty of professional accountant to see prospective consistent with HFI. In case company, in this case, HFI have prepared and considered the requirements of Companies Act and depreciation is calculated accordingly. However, depreciation has been calculated in accordance with income tax, which is not consistent with HFI, therefore it is not proper. The fact that projection has not been prepared on consistent basis using appropriate principles needs to be stated. Further, presentation and disclosure are not adequate. A qualified or adverse opinion should be given or withdrawal from engagement. Discuss how a CA can be associated with prospective financial information without violating the provision. So as a CA, you can give prospective financial information, financial PFI you can give. Lekin what you have to take into consideration, you don't have to vouch for the accuracy of the forecast that you are making. So that if you don't do, then in that case you can give your opinion and it has to be in accordance consistent with your HFI. So test functions normally pertain to HFI, recognizing the skill. For banks, financial institutions, and prospective investors intend to place greater reliance on cash flow and profitability statement prepared by CA. Clause 3 of second schedule of CA Act states that CA in practice shall be deemed to be guilty if he permits his name to be used in connection with an estimate in a manner which may lead to the belief that he vouches for the accuracy of the fact. The above clause does not preclude a CA from associating his name. He can participate in the forecast, review them, provided he indicates that the source of information, basis of forecast, assumptions used, and he does not vouch on the accuracy of the forecast. The same also applies to projections made on hypothetical assumptions about future events and management actions which are not necessarily expected to take place, as vouching for accuracy of projection is not done. SAE 3400 explains prospective financial information can take the form of a forecast, projection, or a combination of both. In this context, how do you differentiate a forecast from a projection? Also provide an example. Additionally, explain the nature of assurance provided by practitioner regarding PFI in accordance with 3400. So forecast and your projection. We had seen in forecast, we give basis what the management is expecting, and assumption in case of projection it is hypothetical assumption, something that the management is also not expecting, correct? So here management not expecting, management expecting, and your responsibility is to ensure you don't vouch for the accuracy of facts. You are engaged by Messrs Active Limited to examine and report on prospective financial information which the management of the company has prepared for investors at presentation at Investor Meet program organized by state government to attract investments in their state. The company in its vision document described various plans and proposals of the company with projected financial goals and means to achieve the same, and various benefits accruing to the economic development of the state. What important matters will you consider while determining your procedure? So for determining your procedure, what are the things that you will take into consideration? So what will you take into consideration? Knowledge of previous engagements, management competence, material misstatement, extent to which PFI affected by management judgment, source of information, underlying data, stability of entities, business and engagement teams experience. So we have done this here, correct? Examination procedure. So these are the things that you will take into consideration. MIM and company wants to issue a prospectus to provide potential investors with information about future expectations of the company. You are hired to examine the projected financial statements and give report thereon. What audit evidence will be required? So while preparing projected financial statements, what will you look? You will look at the source of data, the basis of forecast, the assumptions made, hypothetical assumptions made, management representation, management's acceptance of its responsibility, audit plan, nature, timing, extent of your procedures, and whether auditor expresses modified opinion or withdraws from opinion if such decisions above are not, if the reasons are not correct for giving a unqualified opinion. Mr. Vineet, an auditor, has been approached by Cub Limited to examine the prospective financial information. What factors should the auditor consider before accepting the engagement to examine the prospective financial information? So this also we have done here, that before you take into account what all things you will, before you take into accept the engagement, what are the things that you will look into before accepting, and under what condition should decline or withdraw from such an engagement. So intended use of information, distribution kya hoga, nature of the assumptions, elements to be included, and the period covered. So you will take into consideration these, and if there is unintended use that is not matching with your HFI, or which you are not comfortable giving, or some purpose for which it is not a valid purpose according to me for giving a projected financial statement, then in that case I can withdraw. Discuss and then withdraw. PQ Pharma Limited, a company dealing in research and development of manufacture of pharmaceuticals, is coming up with an IPO. PQ has prepared the prospective financial statements for the next 3 years and included the same in prospectus as a part of its IPO. The prospective financial information includes projected balance sheet, statement of P&L and cash flow, which are prepared on the basis of several key assumptions like favorable government regulations, planned research, and development of more effective medicines at a reasonable price. The company approaches CAZ to provide assurance on prospective financial information, assess the presentation and disclosure, list out the aspects that you will take into consideration. So whether the information that is being given here, whether that information is it is not misleading, accounting policies are disclosed, assumptions बराबर से किया है कि नहीं, date to which this particular this thing pertains, the range is clearly established or not, if there is change in accounting policy, whether the same has been taken into account for the purpose of projected financial information is what you will take into account. Management of S Limited requests you to accept an engagement to report on compilation of pro forma financial information to be included in the prospectus. In the light of SAE 3420, what factors will you consider regarding the company and acknowledging it and understanding its responsibility in the matter? So here again you will talk about the same things we just discussed, that whether here all of this, correct? So here you will talk about disclosing and describing applicable criteria, compilation made as per this. I will get access to all information. I can request more information, and access to those within entity and entities advisor. So access to personal of the responsible party, access to personal of acquiree if there is a business combination, correct? Significance of pro forma included in a prospectus. What is the significance? Then it will just show that any significant event or transaction that has occurred, how is it impacting my unadjusted financial statement? That is the significance. So illustrate the impact of event or transaction of unadjusted FI as if the event has taken place as an earlier date for the purpose of illustration. Is normally used in offer documents, and it can change your P&L balance sheet. Transactions might have an effect on assets, liabilities, and you can also have it as a part of notes to accounts. discuss the term pro forma adjustment. What is pro forma adjustment? Basically any change that has taken place after the balance sheet date but before the prospectus has been issued. You will show what is the impact of such adjustment on the PFFI and whether they have been compiled on consistent basis in accordance with the accounting framework and policies. So more of theory questions are asked here, correct? Practice shall not, this is on SRS 4410, this will not form part of this. You are engaged by Messrs. Viva to examine and report on prospective financial information which the management has prepared for presentation. This I think we have already discussed. This is a repeat question. Correct? Same we just discussed. Yes. So that is it. So the questions not very frequently asked, not very difficult questions to answer. It is mostly, it looks like a case study, but it is theory question only. You don't have to apply a lot of logic there. So it's just theory question on what is the procedure or what are the things you will look into, what is the report, how will you make it. So it's mostly theory questions which are asked from this particular chapter. So we will end this here. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.